mine. You found someone new, but I can't change my love the way that you do.
This is the story of a lost neighborhood and of its people who did not want to go.
I don't want no money. I want my home. The old man is old. See how the old man is old? And I'm old. That's enough. I don't want to get out. I said to my two daughters, they don't want to get out too because they spend a lot of money. Plenty of money they spend in this place. You're not getting out to nobody. Never.
Hi, welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. Tonight I have Santo Aurelio with me. Santo is a former West Ender who has written a book. The book is How to Say It and Write It Correctly Now. Okay, it's a very interesting book. I got it a couple days ago. I didn't read the whole thing, I must admit, but I read a lot of different parts that I thought were interesting. And it gives you clues on how to write and how to speak correctly. And it's very interesting, and I think Santo did a very good job on it. What made you write this book, Santo?
Well, actually, it germinated in my mind at the beginning, frankly, 26 years ago, and I started it, and then I got rather busy in my work. I used to be a court reporter, official court reporter in Middlesex County here in Cambridge, and I was quite busy. And a court reporter takes all the words down and then types them up later on. And it's a difficult job, and you have to know lots of grammar and how to do the punctuation and how to spell. If you keep looking if you keep looking words up in the dictionary, well, you'll be there forever. So you really have got to be a very good speller. Right. At any rate, I started the book then, but then I got rather busy with criminal work, and I did not complete it. But later on, I did complete what I call the Layperson's Legal Dictionary. It's a rather interesting 52-page dictionary of legal terms, words and phrases. And sometimes, you know, I guess I call it legalese, where the lawyers use big words, and it confuses lay people, as I and perhaps you.
Me especially.
And so I thought this would be a good idea to make a book like that, a small book like that. And I completed that. And then a few years later, I did what I call my medical word form list, and that's 1,109 medical prefixes, roots, and suffixes. And I explained what they are economically, you know, very, very small explanation or definition, and then I give 2 to 4 examples of each. So there are as many as, in the medical word form list section, perhaps as many as 3,900 to 4,000 words, examples right in that section. So that's kind of interesting. And then there are some people who perhaps need a little help, and I explain the various parts of speech. There are only 8 parts of speech, and I explain what each one is, and I give examples, good, cogent, economical examples of each. And then, interestingly enough, the English language is composed of almost 1 million words. And I do an enormous amount of reading. I probably have close to 200 English grammar books at home. And I read and studied and researched an awful long time, and I found that if one put together 175 words, that's prefixes, roots, and suffixes, you know, prefix, you know, at the beginning of a word, the root basically the middle of the word, and suffix the end of a word, that comprises, or would comprise, the basic foundation of the English language. So I put all those words in there. And then, you know, some words are so difficult to spell. So I put in 366, I guess you might say one for every day of the year, including leap year, of words that are kind of difficult to spell. And then there are some words that are very, very difficult to pronounce. And a lot of people do mispronounce them. And I put in 140 of those words. And then, you know, sometimes people want to know what Impressionism is, or Post-Impressionism, or Dadaism, and Classicalism, you know, various art terms. And I used to be a docent, if that's a fancy word for guide, at all 3 Harvard University art museums. And while there, and I had to study a year to do that, I would show people beautiful pictures, paintings, lithographs, serial lithographs, And I like that an awful lot. I did that for about 5 years. And I thought it would be a good idea to put in a very small section of art movements and periods. And so I picked out 32 of them, and I only gave, 2 or 3 lines to each. Very small, very pithy, very economical, with some of the major people involved. So when I talked about Cubism, I explained what it was, and then I talked about Picasso and Braque, because these were the 2 people who started this in 1907. And I thought that was rather interesting. And then what else? Let me see. We have other parts of my book. There's a section there that I call potpourri. And there's a little bit of everything in there. And it even tells you the background of that terrible word swastika.
Yeah.
Well, the word swastika used to be a very, very beautiful word for perhaps 2,500 years. But then a madman in the summer of 1921 adopted that as his symbol for his Nazi party.
But on the other hand, the swastika that from Japan and Asia and the Hopi Indians, I believe.
That's right.
Was reversed.
If
you look at it,
yes.
it's reversed.
Yeah.
Hitler reversed it.
He did reverse
But still,
it.
you have people today going into places. I think like in one of those Hopi museums or something, they had the. Actually, it's a good luck charm.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It's
like
a good luck sign.
Years.
Yeah. And you have people going in there, especially Jewish people. They were going in. They got all uptight because there was a swastika in there.
That's right. Yeah.
And in a way, you can't blame them. But it really has nothing to do with the Holocaust or anything else.
I was in Israel actually, I was in Israel 10 years ago, almost this month, and I saw a temple. It was 700 A.D. And on the floor, on this beautiful mosaic floor, wonderfully preserved, was a swastika.
Okay.
And then once I was in Assisi, Italy, and I was in a beautiful Franciscan, I think it's the Franciscan church in Assisi, right on the top of the hill, and on the side of the church, there was a succession of swastikas. And I got a kick out of that. So, that church, by the way, was around 1550, 1560 A.D. So it's amazing just how long the swastika's been around. At any rate, the word swastika is in there, and other words, and I also put in some words that are rather confusing. They are so confusing that I suggest to my readers that perhaps they think twice about using them. Sometimes, like take the word duplicitous is in there. It could mean something, it could mean frankly duplicative, or something, doubling something, doing something twice. It can also mean deceiving somebody or like lying.
Right.
And I remember once a lawyer used that term in court, and I know what the lawyer meant. He meant duplicative, and the judge took it the wrong way.
Okay.
And he thought he meant that the other lawyer was
being
being
deceptive.
deceiving or deceptive, and the judge got quite mad. And so later on, the lawyer asked me, what was the judge all mad about? And I told him what the judge was mad about. Because many times, court reporters look as if they're sleeping when they're going like this and writing. But believe me, they know just what's going on. And I was kind of lucky when I was a court reporter because I could see, and this has a lot to do with English grammar and English and punctuation, I could see as people were talking the transcript right here in front of my eyes, my mind's eye. And this way I could tell where to put in the commas and the periods. A lot of people today in America have comma-itis. So if I say to you, hi Joe, how are you? I, in my mind, instantly see here, hi comma Joe period, how are you question mark. And that is why I would write it in stenotype. And I'd put in my punctuation. A lot of people do not put in their punctuation when they write, and it's very, very hard to understand what they're talking about.
That was one of the things when I read the book.
Yes.
I read the book because I'm terrible with commas. That's probably one of my big faults. I write the newsletter and everything. And sometimes I get confused about, should I put a comma here? Or shouldn't I put a comma here? Sometimes I'm thinking I'm putting in too many commas. Other times I'm thinking I'm not putting in enough. And to me, it confuses me.
Right. It's very difficult, especially the commas. And by the way, there are 19 pages of punctuation principles in that book that are fabulous. In fact, just hyphens alone, 5 pages, which is absolutely incredible. I'll talk about hyphens, if I may, a bit later. But relative to the commas, I remember once looking at something, and because there were too many commas, I got mixed up as to what was going on.
Yeah.
Now, if you're talking about Time magazine and other magazines that have a relatively small column, they, because of the shortness, the smallness, the brevity of their column, can afford to do away with certain commas. So they say June 1944, they may even leave out the comma between June and 1944, whereas every time I write June 1944, I always put in a comma. In fact, if I say I have a birthday in June 1944 and I am going to have a cake, I would say June, comma, 1944, comma, etc.
Right.
So it depends on where those two words lie in the sentence. And Reader's Digest especially leaves out a lot of commas. So if somebody reads the Reader's Digest, they might say, I don't need a comma. Actually, you do. But they can get away with it because they have a very special spatial or spacing problem with their short columns. So actually, when I'm from the West End, so I normally say short columns, because, but no, people don't seem to understand me when I say short, so I have to say short. So normally I tell them that I don't pronounce my R's because I'm from Boston or the West End, but I reserve it for words where you don't need it, like that's a good idea.
How about sandwich?
Yeah, people say sandwich. And,
I was West End,
words too, yeah. I even understand JFK. I used to say the country of Cuba.
Yeah.
You know, so, but anyway, I have no complaint. At 280 words a minute, I have got to write approximately 4.5 words per second. I have no time to wool gather. You waste 2 seconds
And you're in
and
trouble.
you have lost 9 words. You just can't do it. And I can't memorize more than, say, 15 or 16 words, you know. You can't be behind too much. At any rate, so just the punctuation area alone in this book is really, if I may say, quite valuable, because a lot of people make errors. People are making errors in capitalization. In America, you say, in the spring, I'm going to plant some flowers. You don't need a capital S for spring. You just don't need it.
Or for flowers.
Right. Yet, if you talk about Mr. Winter is here and you've got to be careful, there's too much snow, well, in a case like that, you're, as they say, personifying that person. And in a case like that, then you can capitalize it. So things like that are in the book, too. Then there was a lot of verbs that a lot of people get mixed up on. And in fact, I frankly had lunch with somebody yesterday, and a wonderful fellow, highly successful in his business. And I think one of the verbs that I mentioned in there is go, went, gone. The 3 basic forms of the infinitive to go are go, went, gone. I would like to go swimming tomorrow. Yesterday I went swimming. And lastly, the present or past participle form, I have gone swimming on many occasions, or I had gone swimming. Could use, depending on what you're talking about, you could use either one. And so it's go, went, gone. Now this fellow kept saying, yeah, I have went there many times. And he kept saying have went. And he was talking to me about all his many travels. And I found it very interesting. It's too bad. Of course, I never correct him or my children or anyone. The only ones whom I correct, frankly, are my students. And especially if they ask to be corrected. People do not like to be corrected. It's different if the kid is 5 or 10 years old and you're the teacher and you're teaching the 4th grade or the 5th grade. That's one thing. But when people are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, they do not want to hear you correct them. I have, frankly, a relative who says hysterical. Yesterday I was hysterical because I was wondering, we had the little baby, a few years old, the baby said hysterical. And I said, how come the baby says hysterical? And the mother said, well, that's because the baby is hysterical all the time. So then I knew, picked it up from the mother, so I didn't say anything. But it's amazing how many people mispronounce words.
Well, I'll tell you what, sometimes you do it on purpose. Like when I write in the newsletter, and when I use the term West End, even when it's like, the West End, it should be, it probably should be a common noun, right? I mean, it's not capitalized. It shouldn't be capitalized. But I capitalize it anyway, just as a matter of form. Okay, I know it's not right, but I do it as, I guess, as a matter of style. Rather than
take the word east. I would like to travel east when I leave here today. That would be a small e. But you know what? I think everybody should live in the East. Now it's capitalized.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So therefore, in the West End, I frankly would capitalize it. Although I must say there are people who would not. When I worked in court, some of the court reporters would capitalize. I went to the detective squad today, and they would capitalize. Some would not capitalize it. I frankly would always capitalize it. So, so it just depends on some of them.
Language is fun.
It is difficult.
There's a column in the Globe every Sunday.
The Word?
That does the, I don't know what the...
Yeah, W-O-R-D.
And it takes what has become general usage, and it explains why...
Yeah, I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And William Safire used to write, and still does, and very, very good English man, English grammar man. And I would read him, and of course the book that I really like quite a bit is Elements of Style by Strunk and White. A thin book, can't be more than 110, 120 pages. That is the best economical book I have ever come across where they explain major ways to write in just a few pages. Very understandable, wonderful book, and I have a copy of that at home. And
I think it was either that or some other book on style, and they said that sometimes you can break, rules if you want to make a point.
Yes, in fact, I do in this book.
Yeah.
In fact, I even mentioned it. I was kind of embarrassed. A lot of times when I want to stress exactly what I'm selling or what I'm saying, I put in a colon and 2 spaces where you're not supposed to. You're only supposed to put in a colon when it says, I believe the following 3 items should be here. Colon, 2 spaces, apples, comma, oranges, comma, and bananas, period. But instead, I would say, in fact, at one point, that's the example I used in the book, in fact, I said, destiny also means, colon, 2 spaces, comma, or actually comma, also, K-R-M-A, also means, colon, 2 spaces, destiny. It means a couple of other things, too. And I know you're not supposed to do it that way. And I was so embarrassed doing it that way, but I had to, and I wanted to explain to the readers, that's why I hope they read the introduction, that I did this deliberately, even though technically it's wrong.
See, sometimes you have an idea, right? And you put it in such a way, and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
When nobody else does.
That's true.
And I wrote a piece when I first had the West Ender. It was about Rappaport, and I was writing it, and what I said, I forgot exactly what I said now, but I did it like, like cowboys. I said something like, like, Rappaport rides again, or something like. I forgot exactly. Yeah. I forgot exactly what I did. I did it like for style.
Sure.
Rather than. I had people telling me, "You don't know how to spell." Look at the English you use. But and I thought to myself after that, yeah, I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
But if everybody else does it,
Sometimes I shouldn't do this. I know. Sometimes I say things like, that ain't right.
Right.
And, people look at me, and I guess if you keep saying that, I think even President Johnson used to say that. If you keep saying that, people think that it's okay.
Yeah. Well, there are certain, none of them come to mind now, certain words that have started off as slang, but have juxtaposed themselves and have become regular English.
Yeah.
All through, all the way back to Chaucer, probably,
Yeah, I was. Somebody told me just yesterday about the word copacetic, and I thought that Peter Lorre and Humphrey Bogart had done that word, but they said no, it was Bill Bojangles Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
We'd always say copacetic, and so they said to him, that word is not in the dictionary. And he said, well, then it should be, And all I know now is that it is in the dictionary.
Yeah.
And in fact, I know some people who use that all the time. So, but I got mixed up with Peter Lorre and Humphrey Bogart. I understand they introduced the word creep, meaning a sinister person, as opposed to the verb to, like to
creep,
sneak up on somebody or something like that. So, there are some people who sometimes do, make up words. But the English language, especially because of these computer terms recently.
Oh yeah, a whole change.
One word I don't like for the computers when they use the word icon.
Yeah.
Icon is a very, very special term.
Yeah, I don't know how it got. I don't know how it
It's a
got
religious
juxtaposed
term.
to a little arrow. Yeah.
I mean, it's a religious term, but anyway, I have to use the word icon now because everybody else has used the word icon. I just got a new computer the other day, and I had to watch out for the icons and so forth. But and anyway, what other parts of the book there? There's some interesting things there on certain words, as I say, that should not
we
be
should
used.
though, before we get any farther. Right?
Sure.
We should. I want everybody to know. Here's the book, and that we should tell them how to buy it. Okay.
Oh yes.
And so this is a great book. I think it's $20 plus $3 for the.
Yes, that's right. That's $20 and the $3 for postage and handling. And actually, the name of my publishing company is Logo File Press, which is spelled L-O-G-O-P-H-I-L-E. And I like that word because logo means word,
right.
and file means love. So that means a word lover, and I am a word lover. And so Logo File Press in Arlington, Massachusetts. And the address of that company is 436 Mystic Street, Arlington, Massachusetts, and the zip code is 02474. Some people could even, if they wanted to, email me, and some people have. And my email designation is S as in Sam, J as in Joe, Aurelio, and Aurelio would be spelled A-U-R-E-L-I-O, at, that is the @ sign, AOL.com. So repeating, S.J. Aurelio at AOL.com. And it's, as I say, it's an interesting book, I think. It took me a long time to finally do it.
Well, it's not just about grammar, okay?
No, it's not.
It goes through a whole. I haven't had time to do the back of the book yet, okay? I went through the punctuation and everything, and I haven't gotten really to the back, the definitions and the
yes,
and the rest of it.
Yes, Jim. In fact, I forgot to mention, I don't know how I forgot, but there are over 700 homonyms in there. Okay. Like, for instance, maid and maid, like the maid made the bed. Or take the word aisle. You could spell it I''L'.
Right.
You could spell it I-S-L-E. Or you could even spell it A-I-S-L-E.
Or I-L-E.
That's right, the French,
yeah. They use that.
Yeah, so it's very, very difficult, and homonyms are very difficult. Even the word principle. Most people, certainly many people, misspell that.
Right.
And
I'll use it interchangeably.
Yes, another interesting thing about this book is I put in certain memory on mnemonic devices to enable the reader of that book to never, never, never again make the error on principle. And this is my memory device on that pair, principle. If you mean a rule, like a rule of law, and by the way, the word rule is spelled R-U-L-E, then spell principle, L-E at the end. Every other meaning is P-A-L. I own a house. I have to pay principal, interest and taxes. I know a friend of mine who teaches in a school. In fact, he is the principal of that school. I live on a main street, and Mystic Street. In fact, it's even Route 3. And that is a principal street of Arlington. And anything at all, always spell it. I tell everybody, always spell it P-A-L at the end, with one exception. When you mean a rule, R-U-L-E, like I believe in the principle of honesty. I believe in the rule of honesty, and that's a good one for that. And there are a lot of those memory, or they call it mnemonic devices, in that book. And then, you know, sure, you understand about words like poor and poor, P-O-U-R and P-O-R-E, and hoard and hoard, H-O-A-R-D and H-O-R-D-E, and as I say, principle. Then there's some others that are kind of tricky, like all, ready, and already. If you mean already with one word, spelled A-L-R-E-A-D-Y, you mean previously. I already did that. I previously did that.
That's one L.
Right. And one word. But if you mean that you are all prepared now to go swimming tomorrow, then you are all ready to go swimming tomorrow.
You're prepared.
And a lot of people make that error. And it's incredible how many times, even the word any and time, and any time. And then there's a section of that book connected with the homonyms that I call pseudo-homonyms.
Yeah.
And for instance, there's the word emanate
Yeah.
and emulate. Now you might say, well, they don't sound alike.
Yeah.
Said quickly, especially in a noisy
Okay.
environment, emanate and emulate sound relatively alike. And then you have abduce and adduce. And then a lot of, well, there are hundreds of those words in there. And these are the words that I call pseudo-homonyms that are very, very tricky. And frankly, sometimes people need help. So this is why, if I may say, that I called this, if I may hold it up again, the ultimate reference book. So as I said, I called it How to Say It and Write It Correctly. And I said that in the red section here, the ultimate reference book containing practical grammar, punctuation, spelling rules, homonyms, medical terms, layperson's legal dictionary, major art terms, and other matters.
Okay, we've been with Santo Aurelio here. He's also called Joe in the West End. He's a former West Ender, and whenever a former West Ender does something, we like to show him on our show. We like to promote him because we think former West Enders have a certain amount of charisma, and we like to be together and be friendly. And Joe is not only, he worked at the Middlesex Courthouse as a court reporter.
I did.
And he's also got a doctorate. So he's not just talking about, he's not somebody that came in off the street and is talking about a book. He knows what he's doing. He spent his life working with words, okay, and he thinks he can help people by putting out this book, and a lot of people can. I read some of these stories in the paper, and I wonder where these reporters got their schooling, because I'm not an educated person, and I can see that what they're writing is wrong.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, I think you should buy the book. I think, and not only because Joe is a West Ender, okay, that's a big plus, because all us West Enders hang out together, and we try. Not that we try. We all help each other, and when we go to reunions and everything, we all have a great time, because what happened to us is probably a seminal part of our life, that they came in and smashed down all the buildings. But now that it's over and we're all older, I'm 62, and I'm looking back, and I do a lot of this just for fun now. At one point, it was almost like a job, but now I do a lot of it just for fun. And Joe, I think Joe is, what he's saying about the book, what he's saying in the book, is a reason for people to go out and read it. If for no other reason, just to learn how to, like myself, how to punctuate. I have a big problem with that. But I guess, Joe, it's a pleasure having you here, and maybe again in the future, if you write another book, we'll have you back.
Well, thank you very much.
And
I certainly appreciate.
It's always a pleasure. I think you've been on the show about 2 years ago too. But then we were just talking about the old days. And Joe wrote in the West Ender, Old West End Memories. We've been running it for about I don't know how long now, for about 6 or 7 issues. We've been throwing in parts of it, and it's very interesting. So he's also not just a punctuation freak. He's a well-versed writer. He just happens. This is what we're doing today. Okay, and I guess we'll see you at the next West End video newsletter.
Thank you.
you do.
This is the story of a lost neighborhood and of its people who did not want to go.
I don't want no money. I want my home. The old man is old. See how the old man is old? And I'm old. That's enough. I don't want to get out. I said to my two daughters, they don't want to get out too because they spend a lot of money. Plenty of money they spend in this place. We're not getting out to nobody. Never.
Hi, welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. We do the West End House once a year, and tonight is the West End House show. And we have with us Christine Morlock. She's the Assistant Director of Development at the West End House. She's here to tell you about the West End House. I mean, it's a great old establishment. It was founded in 1906, and they've done wonderful things for kids, not just in the West End, which they left around 1970, I guess, or 1960, somewhere in there, because there were there weren't any more kids in the West End. The West End had become a transient neighborhood, and they really didn't have a mission in the West End anymore, so they decided to move out to Allston Brighton, which they felt had a need for them. It's almost, as a matter of fact, I would say they've extended themselves even more than they were in the West End. And they fit very well out there.
Right.
And,
thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks.
And usually we have Andrea Howard. She usually comes, but today she couldn't make it, so we have Kristen. You know, what was the West End? The West End House was founded in 1906, and do you have a little history of the West End House?
Yeah, it was founded in 1906 in, of course, the original West End of Boston, on Blossom Street down there. And, you know, their mission was very much the same as what we still do today, and it's to help kids, help kids overcome different obstacles that may be in their environment to, you know, becoming productive and wonderful citizens.
That's right.
And you know, something that we still continue to do today in Allston Brighton.
Well, they have a great mission because that's, you know, and like I say, I don't know how many kids they helped in the West End. I mean, there was a lot of them, and I'm sure that they helped out quite. Brian Honan and his brother. Right.
Some wonderful alumni.
Yeah, I mean, the West End House has actually, you know, helped a lot of people.
Right, it's great that that I think the West End House has those roots in the original West End, and a lot of people still stay involved from those older days, and you know, continue to be involved now.
Well, in the old days, they really didn't need fundraisers because a lot of the old timers were very successful. Right. And it was basically they were taking from in-house. They were fundraising like in-house, and everybody from the West End would kick in. Unfortunately, most of us are dying.
Well, we have some, we have some wonderful friends who are alumni of the Boys and Girls Club, and you know, George Kane and people like that. You know, it's in memory of Louis Kane, and the Lewises and the Gordons are big supporters. So we're very lucky.
Well, even Sumner Redstone at one point gave some money.
Absolutely.
For the West End House.
For the renovation.
And a lot of people don't realize that Sumner Redstone grew up in the West End, and he's reluctant to talk about it because I think when in his early days, him and Doc Sagansky did some things together. So whenever he's interviewed, he has a tendency to move away from the West End. But be that as it may, yeah, you're director of development. Could you tell us a little bit of what you do?
Absolutely. I got involved in the West End House when I went to Boston College, and I was a volunteer at the West End House. I did